Hi guys, I'm from the UK. Can I stand that side? Okay.
We can still reach you on that side.
This is my first time at one of these events, so please don't throw anything at me. I'm quite fragile. So as I think the intro said,
I'll give you fragile.
I do some architecture work and some product management work at Neverfail. My career started at DEC, where I cut my teeth maintaining the VMS file system. So that background got me started in Neverfail about 12 years ago, where I spent a couple of years building out some of their kernel mode components, packet filtering, and some registry interception stuff. I left Neverfail after 2.5 years and went on a journey with Logica and Capgemini. And I came back to Neverfail about 2.5 years ago. So I had the privilege to work on this exciting new product called Architect. Likewise, I'm really excited to hear any feedback you guys have got. We're going to show you today the product in a not quite a half-baked state, but it's far from complete. I've got a cut of the code from yesterday, so there'll be some visual warts on it as I show it to you. But the whole point of getting it to you early is to take on board your experience and learnings before we close the door and ship it to the marketplace. So I'd really appreciate some interactivity and discussion.
That's unheard of.
What?
Showing us a product before it's done so that the input can actually go into the product.
That's the plan.
That's really cool.
Okay, so what we're going to do, sorry Nick, going to have to get rid of this. So
I got a photo.
I'm going to spend 10 minutes at the whiteboard, if that's okay.
We like whiteboard.
And then get into the demo itself.
We like demos too.
Okay, good.
We're not too happy about PowerPoint.
So far, so good. I wanted to try and lower the tone a little bit from Ashwin's high-level stuff, and get maybe a more concrete elevator pitch on what this product's all about in terms of value props. Forgive my scroll. So, what is the point of this product? If you wanted to kind of catchphrase it or put it into a soundbite, I would characterize it as IT continuity management automation, and which is broken down to two main categories. What do I call it? Assisted automation for assessments and planning. Is that totally legible? Or is that
It's legible to doctors.
right? Sorry. And assisted automation there, and complete automation for monitoring and assurance purposes. So why automation? What is the purpose of automation? We see three key challenges to keeping your IT continuity management house in good order today, and those are scale, which is speaks for itself. It's easier to manage small things than it is big things. Complexity. Gone back to block letters, in case that's better. And that breaks down into modern distributed applications, apps, and is this an illegal word? Heterogeneity?
No.
No? Okay.
It's only illegal if you spell it wrong.
There we go. And finally, flux or pace of change. I knew that was going.
You're so funny.
Pace of change. So virtualization means that the very large swathes of the data structure can change quite quickly. And all of these things mean that you need automation to assist with IT continuity management. And that's what our product Architect is, when you get down to brass tacks, mainly all about. So I want to provide a little bit of, sure.
Not to break your stride, I'm struggling to read the first line under IT config management automation.
It's okay, it's got too many words anyway.
Just because I got caught
It's got the word automation in it.
Right,
yeah,
I can make that out. What does it say?
Assisted automation.
Thank you.
And complete automation.
Thank you.
So by assisted automation, I mean the product provides some tools and techniques which give you a leg up or an acceleration in the workflow associated with continuity management, but it's not complete automation. Whereas, well, that might be an illegal word.
Possibly, yeah.
It's an illegal concept. It has to be a legal word.
I'm still really confused at what does it do?
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Let me get to that. I'm going to get to it right now. So to provide some hooks or context as we go through the demo, I'm just going to put a few lines up here. First of all, the product is delivered. I'm sorry, I've got a malfunction.
There's no objecting to.
It's a software-defined marker.
Okay, but nobody give him the Sharpie.
What was that?
Software-defined marker.
Let's see, that's better. Is that okay? Right, anyway, so the product is delivered as a virtual appliance, and then the UI is a vSphere next generation client plugin. So to get started with the product, you've got to download it, deploy it onto vSphere, and then register it as a plugin. I'm wondering how many guys use the next generation client on a regular basis?
The web client or whatever?
Yeah, the web client.
No.
I have to,
You have to.
but I'm one.
And I ought to.
Well, how about this? Use it for stuff that you have to use it for?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Use it for stuff you don't have to use it for? No.
It looks beautiful, but
Well,
it's
that's the thing, everybody sits in both of them, you know.
it runs like a dog, unfortunately.
Exactly.
So then we're going to use the product to discover automatically all of your infrastructure and then explore all of the dependencies across that infrastructure from the perspective of how that impacts your IT continuity management. After that, we want to link the business with your IT, and we do that in 2 steps by creating a business service and then populating it. And finally, we've got this concept of policy-based planning within the product that supports tier-based assignment of SLAs. You assign those to a business service, and at that point, the architect is going to give you a baseline of protection, show you what your risk areas are, what's protected, what's not, and those things that are protected to what level. So that's a baseline, a kind of a risk baseline.
Okay, I really have to say, I think that there's a consensus in the room. We still have no idea what the hell it does.
Okay, I'll go straight to the demo then. Okay, that's fine.
And just for the benefit of any future people who come to do this, that's always a good idea. Show, don't tell. Just
Okay.
show people what it does.
And-
we
and-
can ask you if we're confused about what it's doing.
Sure thing.
Or
Gives us a
why.
much better framework for
Yeah.
asking the questions.
Yeah, and what it does comes way before how you install it. I don't care how I install it if I don't know what it does.
Yeah, if it's cool enough, I will walk over broken glass to install it. Challenge.
Ship your product with broken glass.
Actually, I've got
But
some
it
of
would
that.
have to be pretty cool.
Okay, well, let's get straight to the product then.
I will walk over hot coals because I've done that,
Yeah,
but
I
the
think
broken
I
glass.
get what you're saying here.
So yeah, I wanted to lay out some context because you might get lost. If you do, just shout up and we'll dwell on a point.
I understand that, and it's really common to do that. It doesn't actually work that way in practice.
Okay.
Like, everyone wants to explain the why. You don't actually need to know that.
Okay, lesson learned for today for me. I told you this is my first time at one of these gigs,
Yeah,
so
and that's
Yeah. But in general, this okay, fine. We're
Okay.
shutting up now.
excellent. So this is the web client, and we materialize as a plugin here and over in the top left-hand corner. So to get us started, you just click on the icon. And this is one of the visual warts we've got right now. We've got to wire the UI up to the back end. In production, of course, you wouldn't see this. In production, what would happen is when you clicked on the link, you'd come to our dashboard page. So obviously, the purpose of a dashboard is to bubble up relevant information from a variety of different parts of the product. And let's start. Let me just hide that right menu. Let's start up here at the progress portlet. This tells you how much discovery has happened, how much stuff you've managed to analyze, what's blocked from a discovery or analysis point of view, pending credentials or additional network connectivity. It tells you how many tiers you've set over your infrastructure at this stage, and what kind of issues you've got, or tasks that you need to complete to kind of extract the value of the product. This isn't implemented yet, neither is our alerting. As I said, this is a kind of an incomplete version of the product. And over here on the left-hand side, you get a view of the mixture of tiers that you've decided as part of your planning and assessment stage to apply across the infrastructure, and then some aggregations at the top there showing for those entities that you have decided to protect, what levels of protection you've got across those. So we're kind of starting in the middle here with an application that's been used and some stuff's been done. We'll get on to business services in a minute. So the first thing a user would do would be check out their progress. Have we done adequate? Have we got enough meat here to conduct our thinking? If we haven't, then we'd go into our configuration tab, add some credentials. Pretty obvious what they do. As soon as you add credentials, Architect uses those to unblock anything which is kind of languishing on the blocked queue, awaiting some credentials. Alternatively, if networking knowledge is the problem, then you can add networks. Now, Architect has got a kit bag of tools and techniques which it uses to try and automate the discovery of your infrastructure so that you don't have to spend time worrying about what's out there, what's speaking to what, and what are the implications. It tries to bring all that stuff in for you as quickly as possible so that you don't have to, that's kind of like just stuff you have to get out of the way before you can start doing your IT continuity management thinking. And some of the tools that it uses, it's got a packet sniffer on the appliance, which has a look at obviously all packets flying past. And from that, it will derive new networks for investigation, any new nodes on the network, any kind of communication patterns that are evident from that. It's got integration with vSphere VI, so it can reach into a hypervisor and pull out all the information about virtual networks, virtual machines, levels of protection against those VMs, and a variety of other kit bags. In fact, it uses the tool Nmap under the hood. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Nmap. It's a pretty powerful network mapping tool. So that's what it uses in the kind of the base condition where there's no credentials to use, and it uses Nmap as a leg up to find out what's available.
So it takes all these different definitions you define basically all these different networks and everything, and you apply it to a workload and say make sure they exist on both sites?
No.
No? Okay.
What we're doing at this stage is just kind of getting our arms around the infrastructure and seeing what things speak to each other and in what way. And then we'll use some extra tooling in a minute to inform us what steps we need to take, what needs to be protected the most, because what's the most pivotal piece of infrastructure on your estate.
So you discover the infrastructure and then tell me what's the most important?
Yeah.
Okay.
So are you trying to identify single points of failure?
Pardon me?
Are you trying to identify single points of failure?
So
that kind of thing? Or central pieces of equipment
You're
that
telling
if
us
it
how
fails,
it
it'll work?
works. We still don't know what it does. We still don't know what problem it solves. But for what?
Why don't we let him
I think it's an appliance of some sort. A third appliance.
I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just trying to wrap my head around all the definitions that you're applying.
So what's going to come out at the end of the exercise is an assessment of your infrastructure in terms of what's being protected by VHA, what's being protected by VFT, what's being protected by Heartbeat, what's being protected by Microsoft clustering, and are those levels of protection adequate against the levels of protection you told me you wanted when you assigned a tier?
So you may take one of those networks and say, I want it to be 100% up all the time, and you'll say, well, you only have one switch, you need two.
That's the right concept, but we do that at the business service level rather than the network level.
I want my CRM system to be at 5 nines availability.
But I may not know everything in my
and
CRM
dependency
system.
map the CRM system down and look at the availability of each of the elements.
So you're exactly right. The ultimate kind of use case or or kind of alleluia moment with our product would be if it uses its dependency analysis to illuminate an unknown box in a corner somewhere, which you didn't realize was supporting a VM over there, which you didn't realize was supporting a business service up here, which is absolutely critical to the, your revenue stream. And if it points out that, then that's job done as far as we're concerned in the early stages of the workflow. And then from that point on, once it's illuminated that weak point, you can then protect it. You can deploy Engine onto it, for instance, or you can just flip on VHA if it's a VM, and we'll after our reanalysis, that glitch will disappear, and our monitoring will ensure going forward that issue doesn't arise again. Or what the monitoring will also show you is if a brand new VM pops up in a corner somewhere and develops a dialogue with some other system which you've already told us was important, and at that point we'll alert you to that fact and say you better go and have a look at that and find out what's going on.
Well, it sounds like the true help here is that you're finding that in most businesses of any reasonable size, we don't know where that critical piece of infrastructure or workload is because 900 other people touched it. You'll help find it and then make sure that we've got it protected.
You've got it. You've absolutely got it.
You're primarily a reporting and monitoring tool. You're not proactively going out and doing, enabling fault tolerance or something like that.
Correct.
You're basically telling us where we have, you're monitoring patterns in the environment and telling us what you believe to be critical infrastructure based on those patterns and business rules that we identify?
Yes.
And then you're telling us where we fall short of meeting those business rules?
Absolutely right.
Okay.
I think you guys are getting it.
I mean, think about here that the technology isn't fully baked yet. We're still in the beta, and guess what? The messaging isn't fully baked either. So bear with us. We're listening to your feedback about how we get it across.
It's actually able to justify your point with regards to protection technologies we support.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to ask Howard, how's Howard feeling?
Better.
Better. Okay.
I just want to set that early so that as you're going over all this, it's fitting into that concept instead of, okay, I'm getting all this data, I don't know what I'm doing with it. Okay. So that helps me.
Good.
That was one comment I just want to point out. I don't know if you noticed, it's actually dependent into our Office to a live system. The product, you're saying not fully baked, it is in beta with customers right now. We'll talk about that later. But that's the live system.
Yes. So I mean, it's quite a rich product. So we're trying to get some beta testing done in some of the early parts of the workflow. So this is the workflow I was trying to get to. It's kind of like a beginning, a middle, and an end to the whole usage of the product. And we've got the beginnings and a lot of the middle. We're finalizing the end pieces, and we're getting beta testers to look at the early stuff. It might be worth just kind of showing this.
So I think it would be helpful if you went to where we define an SLA.
That's where we're going right now.
And so we can go.
Yeah, okay, so let's see.
I'll throw a quick question out. Somebody else can handle it if they want. But you were talking about how if a new VM comes up or is discovered and is in a critical path, are you doing any sort of network flow or protocol flow analysis or getting that information from anywhere?
No.
And how do you know what's talking to what else?
So, all we look for is an established conversation from point A to point B and its direction. And that gives us an idea of the directionality of the dependency. What A depends on B or B depends upon A.
From the hosts themselves, you're talking about?
From
the
where does that information come from?
The OSs themselves?
Yes. So what we do is part of we've got this concept as part of a discovery of IP detection, IP fingerprinting, and IP blueprinting. So IP detection is based upon Nmap and a few other techniques. We just reach out and harvest as many IP addresses as we can, stack them up for analysis. First thing to do there is to fingerprint the IP addresses and figure out whether it's a Windows box, a Linux box, physical, virtual, a hypervisor, a switch, a router. Once you've got that information, we then do the final stage of analysis for our purposes is blueprinting, where we do remote execution of scripts onto Windows boxes and execute WMI calls and a few other things to pull back information which we're going to need to complete our analysis. And that kind of information is what software is installed on there, what is the OS, is there any protection technology installed on there that we need to know about. And, sorry, to get back to your original question, we also execute netstat on each box and look at the existing connections. Who's listening on what sockets, who's connected in other sockets. And if we do that right across every Windows box that we've got credentials for, we build a pretty rich picture of the dependencies and then do some calculations on that, which you'll see in a second, some heat mapping to show you, what's the hot spots in your environment.
How often are you doing like to the net stats? Are you doing it on a regular polling basis, or is it a one-time shot? Because if it's a quick socket.
So in the beginnings of the workflow, we'll do it once, just to get enough information for you to kind of work with and figure out what's important, assign tiers. And once you assign a tier to something, then you've told us it's important. And you've also told us what levels of availability you want on there, or SLAs. So once we've got that, and we know, let's say, for example, you had an availability SLA of, say, 10 minutes downtime every quarter, which is obviously very aggressive, then we've got to poll pretty quickly to identify that breach, an SLA breach of that small margin. Okay, so we're
SLAs, Douglas.
Yes, SLAs. So this is the kind of the fun. This is pretty pivotal to the product. This concept of policies, which are broken down into 4 tiers, with conceptually tier 1 is the most aggressive, and tier 4 is the least aggressive. And we out of the box we come with some parameters for these, but customers are free to tweak these according to their own particular context. So what we come out of the box with is tier 1 is continuous availability across these protection scopes. So we want DR, we want HA, we want data protection, we want app-aware protection. And we also want some pretty aggressive RTOs and RPOs happening in that tier. And so the aggressiveness of those parameters in each tier declines as you go down here. And based upon the importance that the importance of the infrastructure elements that you see, based upon the tools and the visualizations we provide, you can attach these tiers, and that forms the basis of our protection assessment and our ongoing monitoring.
Okay,
So
you can, sorry.
Go ahead.
So you can define and say, this app is tier 1, this app is tier 2.
Yes.
Have it run your audit and tell you, yeah, you think it's tier 1, no way it's actually tier 3, and tell you what you need to fix to make it tier 1.
Correct.
And then monitor that on an ongoing basis, so as change happens, which it always does,
yes,
you can then, particularly for some enterprise groups, DR and the whole test regime is a nightmare.
Yes.
So you can then decide that actually, yep, we're ready to run a DR test, or it can say, you are nowhere near ready, this has 4 things you need to fix and you need to do it now.
Absolutely right. So that's the assurance piece at the back end of our cycle of activities.
Yep.
So, yep. But so you need to assign these tiers before we can do that. You get 2 benefits out of that, which is a prediction. We'll give you a prediction saying you are likely to hit those SLAs based upon our modeling of those protection technologies. And then afterwards, historically, we'll say you did hit those SLAs or you didn't. And that's the assurance piece.
Yep.
So for server protection, you're going to validate that I have some sort of HA cluster behind the application?
So that's an excellent segue into another section of this configuration screen here. So out of the box, we come with a range of protection technologies which we inherently know about, can automatically detect and automatically reach in to find out specific configuration details and use that information to compare against the tier specification. And then once that comparison gives us red, amber, green, quantitative levels of probable SLA breach, and so on and so forth. So an example here would be, let's see, standalone VMware's vSphere application. If we see a VM with that technology wrapped around it, then when we assess that VM, let's say the VM's in tier 1, and the RPO SLA for that tier is, let's say, 10 minutes. No, let's say it's 60 minutes. It's a bit incongruous, but let's say that's the example. We'll go into vSphere, check what the exact RPO setting for that VM is. Let's say it was configured for 2 hours. We'll come back to the user and say, we'll kind of give it an amber flag and say, do you know what, that VM is protected, vSphere replication is there, but it's been misconfigured against your aspirations, your protection aspirations. So all you need to do is go in there, change the RPO configuration, reanalyze, and you'll be good to go. And there are other more kind of black and white instances where we'll see a VM sitting on an unclustered host, which you told us was important. You know, that's a pretty obvious bad situation there.
Are there ways to add types to this? Like, can I manually add, you know, sometimes there are protection mechanisms that we've got, for example, in my environment that aren't these, but I know it's okay.
Yes.
Is there a way to say that's okay?
Yeah. So at the back end of this activity, there's going to be a bunch of reports. So you can run off like a long report saying, for all these entities, you know, red, amber, green, good, bad, and different. Now, there'll be holes in that report if you've got some proprietary technology, double take, Veeam, something like that, which we don't yet know about. So what you can do as an interim measure is manually configure a protection technology. It's not in this version here, but there's another version. There's another green plus sign at the top left-hand corner there. You can click that, and you'll get you'll get this box here, where you can configure the characteristics of that technology.
Okay, cool.
In here, save it, and then as part of the follow-on activities, you can assign that manually defined protection technology to a business service set of entities. So we won't be able to automatically detect it, but you can tell.
No, but when somebody sees that report, I'd like it to not freak them out. You know, like
exactly.
Everything's red.
So,
but if I'm doing data protection via array-based replication, for you to validate that, you're going to need array plugins for a wide variety of storage systems.
Good, excellent point. That was going to be the next stopping point, which is developing an ecosystem around Architect, something we'll probably have to work on. So with some integration, so that SAN vendors, Veeam, DoubleTake can write plugins, very, very simple plugins, which just give us those characteristics of their technology and what the footprint of their technology is in the infrastructure so that we can detect it, pull it back, query it for configuration, do the comparison, and then do the report.
And is there any plans that in the end of that report there'd be a big green button that says just make it so, as Hans is asking for? Can we hook this up to some orchestration kind of tool?
Well, what we've got, it's a really good question. Again, kind of further down in the workflow, which I didn't get to writing up, is the concept of planning and modeling to mitigate those gaps. So by GA, we're going to have a bunch of tools which will help, once we've pointed out the holes, we're going to give you some equipment, some automation to kind of validate some remediation before you go to the trouble of procuring or implementing something which might not work. And a good example of that is bandwidth, replication bandwidth usage, and kind of the trade-off between WAN utilization and SLAs. So here's the scenario. Architect has told you that 20 VMs are underprotected because they don't have any data protection. You think, oh, I'll fix that with some vSphere replication. Okay, cool. Is that going to blow my WAN bandwidth out of the water? It's really hard. It's a hard job to do for one, but for 20, that's quite difficult. So what? Let me just get onto a relevant page here. What Architect's going to do for you is pull out the last couple of weeks of I/O throughput on each of those VMs, use that as a mechanism to figure out typically how long it's going to take to replicate that workload, compare that workload replication duration with the RPO SLA you've told us to assign to it, and then it's going to allow you to do some what-if scenarios. So let's say you've got loads of money and you absolutely don't care about buying some extra WAN bandwidth. You're not stupid. You want to know just what's the minimal amount I need to spend. So this is a brain-dead scheduling of these workloads replication. They're all stacked on top of each other, and they're blowing the WAN bandwidth. This will optimize the scheduling of each workload replication in kind of a Tetris fashion, so that to see whether you'll come back down below this threshold. And if it doesn't, and you've got loads of money, then you just go away and you buy the extra bandwidth. If you're really strapped for cash, then the alternative scenario is you lock the bandwidth, and that radio button up there, oops, and then you crunch the numbers again. An architect will tell you, okay, if you're strapped for cash, that's your WAN capacity, what's the minimum relaxation on the smallest set of workloads that I need to endure to meet that WAN bandwidth? Cool. So, and then you know for a fact, before you go and implement that technology, that you're going to be fine in terms of implementation. And there are two other modeling capabilities we're going to build in. One is solution selection and resource utilization and cost association. So basically, in a nutshell there, we're going to say, again, a bunch of physical or virtual servers which are underprotected. We'll run an analysis based upon what we know about those pieces of kit, what you told us you need in terms of protection, and we'll say, well, protection A will fit that bill, or protection B will fit that bill. So let's say it's a physical machine, VHA isn't going to help you. So we'll come up with a bunch of other technologies which we know about. And then if you do that across a breadth of servers, we'll do the sums, knowing the topological nature of those solutions and what you need in terms of secondary and tertiary servers and storage, and give you a kind of a first order estimate of what the cost is going to be for implementing that solution. And the last modeling tool in the bag is going to be impact analysis. So you can have a look at the dependency structure of your environment. If I take this server down here for 10 minutes, which SLAs roll up to which business services am I going to blow? So that you know in advance of any change event what the implications are for your IT continuity.
That's actually pretty cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And it's cool because, so I've dealt with DR planning and things like that, and you're using actual data. That's been the problem with planning exercises that I've been part of. Is it's basically pulling it out of various parts of our body. Like what depends on what. Trusting application people to know that you're actually pulling the real live data from systems. You're dealing in fact, not in what somebody told you, which is often not fact.
Excellent.
Yeah. Which begs the question: where does some of that come from? Because if I'm in the planning stage, I'm not already replicating, and so I can't ask VMware SRM replication how much traffic it's sending because I haven't turned it on yet.
Well, we can look at the production servers and see what the throughput between what's the I/O rate on that production server you want to try and protect, and then run that through this model here, and it'll give you some interesting answers.
Except that makes the assumption that it's all new data. If I'm using any kind of incremental replication system, the question of how much bandwidth I need isn't how many megabytes of writes that server did to its disk. It's how many megabytes of writes that server did that was new data.
Yeah. But the best estimate you can go take.
But you're always going to have to start somewhere, though.
Yeah, it's a chicken and egg problem.
Yeah.
And the other side, the other chicken and egg problem is, you said that you're going to write a toolkit that folks like Veeam can write plugins to, and Veeam might, but EMC and HDS and NetApp won't. And so if I'm going to be looking at you for, is my SAN replication working? You don't write a toolkit, you write plugins.
It has to go bi-directional, because if you look at what we're doing with the current production technologies, those are kind of sort of plugins we do for the system. We might need to do for EMC, NetApp, and the incumbents. So I think we need to figure out what the right fit is, what the right set of APIs we need to implement.
I mean, I'm having a conversation after this meeting with a company that already has monitoring software that looks at the behavior of array replication systems. And if you just buddy up with those guys, they've already done the integration.
Yeah, that's cool. I've just got another, it's backtracking a little bit, but as far as data collection goes, are you guys planning to integrate it all with like the VMware Infrastructure Navigator or anything like that? That's coming as part of vCloud suites now, and a lot of people have access to it, and it's sitting there watching relationships,
Sure. We spoke to VMware about that about a year ago.
Okay.
And they were planning on building some APIs to allow you to extract that information.
Okay.
It didn't materialize. And in any case, they only do VMs and then one hop into the physical world. Whereas we cover the whole thing.
Yeah, no, I guess in the virtual world it would be another source of information,
Yeah,
if they had APIs. That seems to be the problem with
why
all of their new stuff does not have APIs that are open. yeah.
Why go and reinvent the wheel? So if we can drag it from there, we should do. Plus, on our roadmap is general CMDB integration. So rather than going out and discovering stuff, just kind of lift it from a CMDB if the CMDB is in a good state.
Well, and so, yeah, that part of the DR planning that I've talked about. Is this CMDB in a good state? You know, like that ends up to be a chicken and egg problem too. You know,
So you want to repopulate the CMDB with the
no, you end up learning something, populate the CMDB, redoing your analysis, learning some more. You know,
or just throwing away the CMDB and living out of the discovered analysis because your rate of change is so fast.
That's the thing, you know. So
which exactly, the rate of change is so fast. That's why our monitoring activity is continual. Once you told us what's important.
So, and that's the hard part about DR is
So do you, like continuity software, go dig into the SAN configuration and ensure that, my multipathing is actually up and all of that as well?
It doesn't do that.
One is with the BCDR ecosystem. The other one is the storage ecosystem, eventually the network ecosystem. So I think it's what we have taken on is kind of a comprehensive vision, right? We'll need to act upon.
The problem you have is it is of marginal value until it does a lot.
Right.
And so you have to take a huge bite before I go, oh yeah, it does all this stuff.
Yeah.
Because if you only do a third of it, then it's interesting. If you do 2/3 of it, now it's really useful.
There are fast ways to get to that point.
Yeah,
it sounds like
you partner with somebody who's doing SRM, and their collector will generate data that you can do analysis on. So you don't have to learn that SMIS isn't actually a standard.
So nobody's doing SMIS as a standard.
Yeah.
To follow on from that, you mentioned before about Windows environments and collecting through WMI. Do you support other technologies, particularly like Unix environments?
So we have most support for Windows. We have support for Linux servers which are virtual, because we can look at the edge of the virtual machine and figure out whether it's VHA or VFT or something. But we don't currently have a means to reach into a Linux box and find any protection technologies on there. For example, what's that?
Veritas cluster server.
Yes, we don't do that currently.
Okay, that's a real shame, because the immediate use case I can think of for this is banks, and there's a bit of back chatter about that going on. The companies that I think that would most need this product are the ones that need, like they have audit requirements to do DR assurance. They frequently don't want to run anything important in virtual machines. They for varying reasons, which are, we can argue about whether it's true or not, they don't believe that tier 1 workloads belong on a VM. So that's a real shame, because it kind of undermines your ability to sell the product to the people who most need it and would get the most value.
I hear what you say, but I mean, this is a roadmap, and and we are actively now listening to what people tell us about where the opportunity is, and your comments are not lost on me. So if we see a really rich segment with some low-hanging fruit in banking, and Unix is a platform prerequisite, and knowing about stuff like VCS is also cool, then it gets prioritized.
Or even some of the storage array vendors that deal with very large quantities of data.
Yeah.
That would be a great plug-in to do, again, because you've got so much there that you could lose if something goes wrong.
Right.
We can help you protect that more easily.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. At least early on, there's probably a better opportunity in a small number of large customers than a large number of small customers. I know it's easier to get ready for the customers with smaller environments, but they're the ones least willing to invest in this kind of thing.
Okay, it's a paradox.
I didn't say your life was going to be difficult, was going to be easy, no.
So I thought maybe we could move on to another part of the application.
Yes, please.
Yep. So this is the environment page, which we've got a bunch of filters at the top, which is incomplete, which controls what parts of the environment you're looking at any particular time. As you set those filters, all of the components on this page react to that scope and recalculate their aggregations and their statements. So if you set the filters, set the controls for only all VMs on a particular hypervisor, then only business services which intersect that set of infrastructure will materialize here. So it gives you a mechanism to gauge the linkage between your infrastructure and your business. That's one aspect of this. This is probably the most interesting component on here, which is the heat map. And each rectangle, the size of a rectangle is correlated to the number of inbound dependencies on that element. So the bigger it is, the more important it is in your environment. And the way it's calculated is kind of like this. If this is a hypervisor, it's hosting some guests, which in turn runs some apps. And we detect all these kind of inbound dependencies happening this way, and we add these up, and that constitutes the size of a rectangle. So anything which is big in the top left-hand corner is important. Anything which is small in the bottom right-hand corner is less important because it's got less inbound. There are less things relying upon it to run. Now, the way this is configured just now, it's showing you which parts of your infrastructure are big and are yet to be analyzed. We're quite lucky. Everything which is big and important is analyzed. So, you know, our job is done in terms of adding credentials into Architect, and we can start doing some tier assignment and some other kind of analyses. What it also shows you is what protection tier things are in. So if you've got things which have been assigned to like a low tier or no tier or unassigned, and they're big and in the top left, then you still got work to do. You should that's an important thing. You need to think about what tier to assign to it, assign a tier so that we can start doing some protection assessment for you. And also, if there is a tier assigned, then it will start to give you some indications of, you know, red, amber, green, levels of protection. So if something's red, or kind of these deep colors in the top right-hand corner, top left-hand corner, then that's bad news again. And it gives you some prioritization of what your next activities should be with Architect. So one of the challenges with Architect is that it takes a bit of, you know, it's assisted automation. It takes a bit of effort to extract the value, a bit of thought process, but we provide some pretty powerful tools and techniques to get you along quickly. And one of the things which is missing from this right now is an automated, context-sensitive, dynamic task list, which tells you what you need to do next to continue to extract value from the product. It's going to be in GA, and it materializes on the dashboard page. But what that will say to you is, dude, you haven't created a business service yet, go ahead and create one. And once a business service has been created, you won't see that again. But if you've got business services there with nothing populated, again, it'll tell you really need to get some infrastructure into those business services to create that linkage. And then it'll tell you need to assign tiers, you've got an issue over there, need more credentials here, unplug a network over there. So it'll handhold you through the whole experience when it's finished.
But it won't automatically do it.
Automatically do what?
Like recover, you know.
Make it so.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
But make what so exactly?
You've identified a gap between the policy of what protection you want, and at the moment what you've got is reporting that we have non-compliance with policy. The next logical step is make it compliant with policy, or at least
try to.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that would be
some bits are really hard, but if it's, you know, you mentioned earlier on you've got a not meeting your RPO because you've misconfigured your vSphere replication. That's an easy API one to make a change to.
It is, and we should make at least a recommendation.
And kick a wizard.
Yeah.
Right, actually, where you can, kick a wizard to fix it.
If you remember that slide that Nick had started with, the circular slide, there was a section which said protection, right? We listed a bunch of protection solutions, right? So in the context of initially, sorry, tread on
sparse.
All right, sounds good.
But you can get at it through a CLI, can't you?
So in the context of those solutions, right, initially with the Neverfail solution, we'll be able to obviously build in the integration, say, we see there's a gap, you want tier 1 protection, fix this, right? So automatically deploy the Neverfail solution. We want to be able to get to that level with integrations with Veeams and these other solutions, including the storage layer, right? Yeah. So until we build that integration, we wouldn't be able to get to that automation, but that is where we want to go.
But some of the stuff is relatively, I mean, clearly integrating with your own product is a really easy thing, right? And applicable across a wide range of solutions. You've already got high availability solutions for physical and those kinds of things.
Absolutely.
And but also physical to virtual, I think, with your production on physical to meet this speed, and the HA version on virtual, that kind of stuff just seems so logical that you should be putting it into Rev 1 of the product with your own.
Absolutely.
Saying, as we come out.
We completely agree with you.
Yeah.
Cool. We were having a side conversation over here, something if you're not aware of it, the comments before about VMware not exposing APIs about any of their new stuff. There is no API for vSphere replication right now. You want to use it programmatically in some way, you don't choose that product.
The keyboard.
I'm a vSphere replication user, and it sucks. The product is fine. The product can do what it says it does, but it's all manual configuration. The only people that know about the API is VMware themselves. And it's becoming a real problem. So you're saying kick off a wizard. You can kick off a wizard. The wizard would have one screen saying, sorry, like finish, Yeah, so.
The short dialogue.
Magic word. Go for it. So that's just a recommendation.
But it's easy enough, at least they can make a recommendation and say, hey, you should go fix this. And then you got to go do it manually, but whatever.
Well, can you say VMware socks again? For posterity.
Windows what? Anyhow.
Parts of VMware.
So let me just finish off this particular piece. So through our dependency analysis, we've pointed out what's important, the big rectangles. You can drill into that and find out why it's important. So this is what we call the detail page for the entities we deal with. We've got one for computers, one for applications, one for business services. And that's not very clever. Get rid of that. And we just provide a bunch of attributes relevant to that entity. And we haven't really gotten onto protection assessment yet, which is where we do our assessment against tiers. You see a very similar structure to the tiering system. What protection scopes are there? What SLAs? What your SLA assessment is like? What we wanted to bring your attention to is this very prototype visualization of why that thing's important. It's called a dependency graph. If you click on it, then it's going to show you from this starting point here, if you follow all of the dependency graph, where does it take you in the infrastructure? You can control the depth and complexity of this by this little slider here. Let's get it down to a manageable position, and we can see that this is actually what I didn't say was on the previous page. That was actually a hypervisor. It's our corporate hypervisor, and it supports like loads of VMs, so it's pretty important. And you can see that here by clicking on here, and that's all the inbound dependencies on that hypervisor are illuminated here, and you can see all our Neverfail.
By dependencies here, you're really meaning TCP sessions, right?
Well, we've got different kinds of dependencies. We have got ones based purely on communication patterns. We've got ones based upon apt computer, an application running on a computer, and we've got ones based upon a guest running on a hypervisor. And we extract all those. So these are examples of the last one there, guests running on a hypervisor. And you can see these are all of our internal corporate VMs running on our corporate.
The problem is dependencies are inherently such a complex concept, because
especially when you've got things that use random ports.
Well, just that these guests were running on this host at some point in time.
Yeah.
It doesn't really mean those guests are dependent. The dependency isn't on the host, it's on the cluster.
So two things there. So the current state of play is sufficient for our middle, what's gone now, the middle part of our story, where we're doing a protection assessment. But then when it gets to the monitoring stage, when things change, we'll capture that and report on it.
Yeah, I'm just having done my share of DR planning, there's a whole nother level of service dependencies that is kind of more complex and more important because it's also order dependent, right? Well, AD has to come up first because right. Right, and so now I got to do site analysis that says, do I have this in every,
And you can show the manual versus automatic.
Right, not that this isn't important, but it's just,
but it's just the beginning.
It's just the beginning.
So not only that, if you're alerting on those changes, that's just extra noise in your environment. Do I really care that, VMware decided to migrate my host in the middle of the night? I don't need an alert on that.
No, and we wouldn't alert on that as long as if that happened with no impact upon your SLAs. If the what did you say, the vMotion? If it happened kind of seamlessly and there was no issues with the vMotion, then our app monitoring would be happy. But if something happened as a result of the vMotion, like a TCP/IP drop for some significant piece of time, then and that breached your SLA, then we would tell you at that point that something happened of consequence, and you can go and figure out why.
All right, I was just stating that based on your comment that you said that would be updated in your alerting process. So
we would recognize that as a change, but we would check back to see if it was a policy violation or not.
And that's actually, I think that's actually kind of interesting because, vMotions are generally accepted as, well, I at least generally accept them as being safe, but having a tool that checks that again, what assumption, that's an assumption I'm making,
And it does increase
it'd be nice to actually have some data to support that.
Yeah, business confidence that DR is not a change that affects availability, supported by we come out
the fact that I'm vMotioning things in the middle of the day didn't really change anything as far as
well, and if I take this host online, does the other host in the cluster actually have connectivity to all of the resources that this VM is dependent on? Because it might own its own data store and I didn't connect it to the other hosts in the cluster because I'm an idiot. Idiocy not to be underestimated.
Exactly. So let me just, that's pretty much the dependency graph. As you go around, you can see the different natures of the dependencies, inbound versus outbound, and if you hover over them, they'll tell you what kind of dependency it is, whether it's an app to app, app to computer, guest to host, and so on and so forth.
Cool.
So our thinking is that this will provide enough ammunition for users to have a pretty good handle, assisted handle on the levels of dependencies across their infrastructure, what's important, and use that as a basis for doing that final step of generating the business services which are related to your individual business functions in your organization, populate those with the relevant applications, and Architect will then use that initial seeding of applications to figure out what the footprint of the business service is for you automatically. Let me give you an example here. So we've got a finance business service here, and I've previously seeded that with a bunch of applications, 6 applications. And based upon that, over here, architects worked out that those applications in turn speak to 6 other applications. All of those applications, are hosted on 5 physical computers, 10 virtuals, they straddle 5 hypervisors, and interweave over 5 networks. So from that initial starting point, we've given you what the actual footprint is based upon the dependencies that you saw a minute ago. And what's more, at this stage, once you've got your business service created, you can add a tier to that. Let's say tier 2. And Architect's going to ask you, do you want me to propagate that tier across, ripple it down through those dependencies so you've got a complete, consistent, systematic policy relevant to that business service? And so everything within the scope of that ripple effect will then get protection assessed for prediction purposes, and then will be monitored in the same consistent manner going forward.
With the dependency mapping that you've got, that's saying that there is a relationship of some kind between two entities. So this is apropos of what we were talking about previously about some a web post someone put about the NSA stuff, and we only collect metadata. You can do some quite sophisticated statistical analysis with that, just doing group mappings and matrix algorithms to use pretty much what I think the data is that you've got here, that you could use very similar sort of analysis to find central points that rather than just saying these things are connected to one another, you can have a look at everything that's connected to each other, what things are most connected to other things. So that's sort of the assumption there is that this thing is probably really important.
That's exactly what we plan to do. Well, that's kind of in the same theme of one specific feature we want to implement, and I'm not sure if we'll make it into GA, but if we see something like, that's like a laptop, one, and there's maybe 100 of those, and there we see that they're all speaking to a couple of middle-tier servers, and in turn there's one back-end, maybe a clustered set of servers here, which these guys are speaking to, then that immediately presents itself as a candidate business service, which we can present to the user and say, did you know this integral self-contained communications unit is doing something significant and important for your business? What is it? Is it a finance department? Is it a collaboration service or whatever it is? And then they can say, oh yeah, so it is. Say, verify that hunch that we get, or that suggestion we made, and then that could be an automatically created business service quite rapidly. So,
I can see a lot of architects and central IT groups from an audit perspective who would love that, so they can go and find, why are we running payroll on the development lab? And things like that. Because that happens all the time.
Or, on lower tiers of storage or whatever.
Yeah,
Or
this really important business service has not been built properly because we were in a hurry, or because reasons.
Runs the LDAP for the production system.
Yeah.
Or or the new CFO wanted to check out a new expense reporting application, and they put it up someplace as a toy, and he said, "Put that in production today." So they flipped the switch.
No, he never said that. He said, we're now using it.
Right.
Not to the IT.
Right, never told IT it was production. I was playing with this, but now I filled in the credit card number on the website. We got a production license.
So
you laugh. That's for real.
So here's?
100-person law firm. Whole new expense reporting system was running on a Mac Mini off some guy's desk under VMware.
And it gets released by an all-hands email.
Yep. From the CFO, who was only been at the company for 2 weeks, and and the IT guy never put 2 and 2 together to go, wait, this all-hands email that I got that said use the new expense. I don't travel, I don't do expense reports. I'm going to ignore it, forgetting that was the application you just fired up for the guy.
So let me round off the demo with showing what protection assessment looks like right now. I haven't got reporting to show you. It's a work in progress, but what we do have is the interactive version working, which shows you a breakdown of a business service in terms of what the target SLAs are that you assign to that business service, what the predicted SLAs are based upon a protection assessment, and when monitoring kicks in, you'll get the actual historical SLAs that you achieved being contrasted against the predicted, being contrasted against what you aspire to in here. Similarly for protection scope, the tier here says everything's in scope, and we get an assessment provided here. This business service is a roll-up of the dependencies it in turn has, which is a SharePoint farm, and we can see that it's doing pretty good. We're not in bad shape at all. All we've got is an amber flag here, which is it's a bit illegible, but basically it's saying, okay, let's not go there. Let's go down. Let's go down to the actual culprit, which is causing that roll-up to happen, which is this SharePoint server here. And we can see that what it's telling us is that site-level failover for this SharePoint server could be provided because Continuity Engine is running in a paired topology. If you just extend that to a tertiary, then you're going to be good across all scopes. And similar statements are made for the green flags as well. So it's saying that the computer which this application is running on is protected by IT Continuity Engine, which we expect to attain the required service level. So those similar statements will be made for all of the vSphere technologies, Microsoft clustering, and any manual protection technologies you add.
Can you export that as a report?
You can. So there'll be a kind of a proper systematic report which shows for all entities what the assessment was, what the rationale statement is, and whether it's a red, amber, or green.
That is fantastic. That right there has real value.
Yeah, I can mail that to somebody and say, I need $1 million.
Yeah, this is why, this is the justification for the spend on the most boring thing ever, which is DR.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I think that pretty much concludes what I wanted to exhibit.
Actually, GCP is boring DR.
So
boring can be profitable.
People don't, it's a boring thing. Like backup and recovery is boring until you need it.
Yeah.